The ocean goes down over 7 miles of total darkness, crushing pressure, and near freezing cold. Most people think the scary stuff lives at the surface. They are wrong. The deeper you go, the more unrecognizable life becomes. We are talking about fish with transparent skulls, eels that swallow prey bigger than themselves, creatures that fuse their bodies together to survive. If you enjoy what we cover today, like and subscribe, because we are going 20,000 feet down, one zone at a time. Brace yourself. We begin. Picture the ocean as a skyscraper. You live on the top floor. The lobby is bright, warm, and full of people. But every floor you descend, the lights get dimmer. The temperature drops, the hallways get narrower, and the things living there get stranger. The ocean works exactly like that. Scientists divide the ocean into 5 zones, based on depth. Each one has different amounts of light, different pressure, different temperature, and completely different creatures. Most people picture the ocean as one big blue space. It is actually 5 separate worlds stacked on top of each other, and the rules for staying alive shift dramatically between each one. The first zone is the sunlight zone, reaching from the surface down to about 650 feet. This is the world you know: dolphins, tuna, sea turtles, colorful coral reefs. Sunlight floods this layer, so plants can grow, oxygen is plentiful, and life follows familiar rules. If you have ever been snorkeling or watched a nature documentary about tropical fish, you have seen this zone. Below that sits the twilight zone, stretching from 650 feet down to about 3,000 feet. Sunlight still reaches here, but only as a faint blue ghost, enough to cast shadows, enough to see a shape swimming above you. Many animals here have massive eyes built to catch every last photon of light. Some glow on their own. The hunting gets serious in the twilight zone. Then comes the midnight zone, starting at 3,000 feet and running down to 13,000 feet, total darkness. The sun does not reach here at all. The temperature is just a few degrees above freezing. Animals here live in permanent blackout. Every creature in this zone either makes its own light or learns to hunt by sensing movement alone. Deeper still is the abyssal zone, from 13,000 feet down to about 20,000 feet. The pressure here is so extreme that it would flatten a steel drum like a tin can. Almost nothing lives here compared to the zones above, but what does live here is almost impossible to describe without seeing it. Bodies made of jelly, mouths that open wider than the animal itself, eyes pointing in directions that should not make sense. And at the very bottom sits the Hadal zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. This zone exists only in the deepest ocean trenches, places where the ocean floor has cracked open into giant gashes in the earth. The deepest point on the planet, the Mariana Trench, sits here at nearly 36,000 feet below the surface. To put that in perspective, if you dropped Mount Everest into the Mariana Trench, its peak would still sit over a mile underwater. Each zone demands something different from the animals that survive in it. The deeper you go, the more extreme the demands become. Creatures have to solve problems that evolution never anticipated at the surface. No light means vision becomes useless or gets completely reinvented. Freezing cold means metabolism slows to a crawl, and every calorie counts. Crushing pressure means a body made the normal way would be destroyed in seconds. The ocean floor is covered in a thick layer of soft sediment, centuries of dead material slowly drifting down from the zones above. Scientists call it marine snow. For the creatures at the bottom, it is the only food delivery system they have. Each zone has its own monsters, and the further down you go, the harder they are to believe. The next zone down is where the light starts to disappear, and that is where the real changes begin. Stand outside on a bright afternoon. Feel the sun on your skin. Now imagine that warmth and light being the reason almost everything alive on Earth is able to exist. Sunlight drives photosynthesis. Photosynthesis creates plants. Plants feed animals. animals feed other animals. The entire food chain you learned in school runs on sunlight, like a machine runs on fuel. At 3,000 feet below the ocean's surface, that machine turns off. The last traces of sunlight vanish completely at the top of the midnight zone. Below that line, the ocean is in a darkness so complete that your eyes would register absolutely nothing, even after hours of adjusting. Humans have a word for this kind of dark. We call it absolute. Scientists call the zone below 3,000 feet the aphotic zone, meaning the zone without light. And here is what makes it so extraordinary. Life did not stop at that line. It adapted. Every single animal living below 3,000 feet had to solve a version of the same problem. The energy source that powers almost all life on Earth is gone. So how do you eat? How do you find a mate? How do you avoid getting eaten? How do you even know which direction is up? The answers evolution came up with are some of the strangest designs ever produced by a living thing. First, animals that once relied on vision had to either develop completely new ways of seeing or give up on eyes altogether. Some species in the midnight zone have evolved eyes so enormous that they take up most of their skull, built to detect the faintest trace of light from bioluminescent creatures nearby. Others have eyes that face straight upward instead of forward, because the only light source in their world comes from the faint glow of animals swimming above them. Some creatures abandoned eyes completely. Certain deep-sea shrimp have no functional eyes at all. Instead, they have heat-sensing organs that detect the warmth radiating from hydrothermal vents, which are cracks in the seafloor that leak superheated water. No eyes needed. The heat tells them everything. The food chain also had to be rewritten. Without sunlight, there are no plants growing on the deep ocean floor. So most deep-sea animals survive on what falls from above: dead fish, fragments of whale carcasses, bits of organic material drifting slowly downward from the sunlit zones. Scientists call it marine snow. It is sparse, unpredictable, and nowhere near enough to support a normal ecosystem. This scarcity forced deep-sea animals to become extraordinarily efficient. Their metabolisms run at a fraction of the speed of surface animals. Their hearts beat slowly. Their bodies grow slowly. Some species in the midnight zone can survive for months between meals, running on almost nothing. The pressure also changed everything about body design. A swim bladder, the gas-filled organ fish used to control their buoyancy near the surface, would explode under the pressure of the midnight zone. Deep-sea fish do not have swim bladders. Instead, many have gelatinous, water-filled bodies with almost no rigid structure at all. They are held together by the water around them more than by any internal skeleton. What this produces is a category of animal that looks more like a hallucination than a fish. Translucent skin, organs visible through the body wall, structures that dissolve or collapse the moment they are brought to the surface. 3,000 feet is the border between the ocean you recognize and the ocean that operates by completely different rules. And the creatures guarding that border are already strange. What lives further down is far worse. Take an empty plastic water bottle. Screw the cap on tight. Now drop it into the deep ocean. By the time it reaches the bottom of the Mariana Trench, it will have been crushed into a hard little puck the size of a hockey puck. The air inside it will have compressed until the bottle itself collapses inward. Your body is mostly water, but you also have lungs full of air, and that air is the problem. Water pressure increases by roughly 15 pounds per square inch for every 33 feet you descend. At sea level, the air around your body pushes on you at about 15 pounds per square inch. You do not feel it, because your body pushes back at the same force. Now imagine descending into the ocean. Every 33 feet down, another 15 pounds per square inch gets added on top of you. By the time you reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the pressure pressing on every square inch of your body would be over 15,000 pounds. To give that a picture, imagine stacking 50 jumbo jets on top of a single square inch of your hand. That is the pressure at the deepest point on Earth. For a human body, this is immediately lethal. The air in your lungs would compress instantly, your sinuses and ears would collapse. Any gas pocket in your body would be crushed to nearly nothing. The pressure would not slowly squeeze you, it would destroy you in seconds. So how does anything survive down there? The key is that most deep-sea animals have eliminated gas from their bodies entirely. They carry no air pockets, no gas-filled cavities of any kind. Instead, their tissues are mostly water and specialized proteins. And water does not compress the way air does. Water transmits pressure equally in all directions, so a water-filled body simply equalizes with the surrounding ocean, rather than getting crushed by it. Scientists studying deep-sea fish discovered something remarkable. The tissues of fish living below about 3,000 feet contain a specific molecule that acts like a shield at the cellular level. This molecule stabilizes proteins that would otherwise fold and break under extreme pressure. The deeper a fish lives, the more of this molecule its tissue contains. At the bottom of the deepest trenches, some fish have so much of it that researchers can smell it before they even open the specimen bag. It smells strongly of fish, strongly enough to sting your eyes. Even with this chemical protection, building a body that survives those pressures requires abandoning almost every normal biological structure. Rigid bones would crack. Dense muscle would be compromised. So the animals that live in the deepest zones are often gelatinous, soft, and structurally simple. They look fragile. In their environment, that softness is the reason they are alive. The Mariana snailfish is a good example. It looks like a pale, almost transparent tadpole, barely any structure visible from the outside. Scientists pulled one up from nearly 27,000 feet, and it looked like it might dissolve in your hand. That animal casually swims through pressures that would instantly destroy a submarine's hull. Here is the part that should stop you for a second. We build our best submarines from reinforced steel, and they have depth limits. A living creature made of soft tissue goes deeper without a problem because it gave up the idea of resisting pressure and decided to become part of it. That chemical protecting its cells is the next piece of this story, and what scientists found inside it surprised everyone. Imagine your body is made of thousands of tiny machines, all working at the same time. Those machines are proteins. They fold into specific shapes to do their jobs. Your muscles move because proteins fold. Your food gets digested because proteins fold. Every chemical reaction keeping you alive depends on proteins holding the right shape. Now apply enormous pressure to those proteins. They distort, they flatten, they stop folding correctly, and when proteins stop working, the animal dies. This is the fundamental problem every deep-sea creature faces. The deeper it lives, the harder pressure pushes on every cell in its body, threatening to destroy the proteins that keep it running. Evolution's answer to this problem is a molecule called trimethylamine N-oxide. Most people know a simpler version of this chemical from everyday life. When fish goes bad in your refrigerator, the smell that hits you when you open the container is a related compound. That sharp, overwhelming fish smell. In the deep ocean, the useful version of this molecule does something extraordinary. It slots into proteins like a wedge. It physically holds the protein in the correct shape, even when enormous pressure is pushing on it from every direction. Scientists describe it as a chemical chaperone, something that escorts proteins through dangerous conditions and keeps them stable. The deeper a fish lives, the more of this molecule its tissues contain. This is a clear, measurable relationship. Scientists have tested fish from multiple depth zones and found that for every 300 feet deeper a fish lives, its tissues contain a predictably higher concentration of this compound. At extreme depths, the concentration becomes so high that the fish's flesh is saturated with it. Snailfish collected from the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench had the highest concentration of this molecule ever recorded in a living vertebrate. Their tissues were so loaded with it that the researchers handling the specimens noticed the smell immediately. A sharp, powerful fish odor strong enough to make their eyes water. That overwhelming smell was the chemical protection system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Here is what makes this even more striking. Scientists used this relationship to make a prediction. They calculated that beyond a certain depth, the concentration of this protective molecule would become so high that it would actually start interfering with the fish's own cellular chemistry rather than protecting it. The molecule that saves deep-sea fish from pressure damage eventually becomes toxic in high enough quantities. Based on that calculation, scientists predicted that around 27,000 feet is likely the absolute maximum depth where a fish with a spine can survive. Deeper than that, the cure becomes worse than the problem. And so far, no vertebrate has ever been found below that depth. The prediction has held. What lives in the deepest trenches below that line is something else entirely. No backbone, no complex tissue systems. Creatures built along completely different biological principles. But before we get there, the soft and jelly-like bodies of deep-sea animals raise a question that goes even deeper than chemistry. Why do so many deep-sea creatures look like they are made of water? And what does that actually allow them to do that a normal body cannot? Pick up a jellyfish at the beach. If you have ever done it, you know the feeling. It is mostly water. It has almost no weight. It falls apart if you hold it too tightly. It seems like it should not be able to survive anything, let alone an ocean. Now imagine that same design surviving at 20,000 feet below sea level, and doing it better than anything built from bone and muscle. That is the story of gelatinous deep-sea life, and it is one of the most elegant solutions evolution has ever produced. Building a body from dense muscle and solid bone is expensive. It requires enormous amounts of energy to grow, maintain, and fuel. At the surface where food is abundant, and the sun provides a constant energy source through the food chain, this expense is worth it. Speed, strength, and hard protective armor make sense when you have the calories to sustain them. Deep in the ocean, calories are rare. An animal might go months without eating. Under those conditions, an expensive body is a death sentence. Every calorie burned maintaining dense muscle tissue is a calorie the animal cannot afford. Gelatinous bodies solve this problem elegantly. The main structural material in a jellyfish-like body is a substance called mesoglia, a mostly water gel threaded with loose protein fibers. It costs almost nothing to produce and almost nothing to maintain. The animal gets most of its buoyancy from the water content in its own tissues, rather than from expending energy to swim constantly. It can drift, it can wait, it burns almost nothing, just existing. But there is another advantage that goes beyond energy. A gelatinous body is almost impossible to detect at depth. Many deep-sea gelatinous animals are completely transparent. Light passes straight through them. They cast no shadow. They reflect no light. In an environment where the only light comes from other animals, being invisible is an enormous survival advantage. Some of these animals are so transparent that you can see their organs working inside them in real time. Scientists lowering cameras into the midnight zone have captured footage of creatures so clear they look like living glass sculptures. Their hearts beating, their stomachs processing food, all of it visible through body walls that may as well not exist. This transparency has a cost. A transparent animal cannot hide a dark, solid stomach full of partially digested prey, because that dark mass becomes a beacon in the dark water, visible to predators from a distance. Some deep-sea animals solved this by lining their stomachs with a black pigment so dark it absorbs light completely, hiding their last meal from anyone hunting them. The giant phantom jellyfish is a perfect example of what this body plan can achieve at scale. It reaches over 3 feet across its bell, with 4 ribbon-like mouth arms that trail behind it, each one up to 33 feet long. That is about as long as a school bus. Those arms drift through the water like enormous curtains, trapping prey that swims into them. A massive, slow-moving animal that costs almost nothing to run and is almost invisible in the dark. At the surface, a body like this would be eaten immediately. In the deep ocean, it is one of the most successful designs ever produced. And gelatinous bodies are only the beginning of how deep-sea creatures solve the problem of living in darkness. Because once the light is gone, the next question becomes survival without being able to see. 650 feet below the surface, something changes. The bright blue of the upper ocean starts to darken. Colors bleed out one by one. Red disappears first, then orange, then yellow. By the time you reach 1,000 feet, the world around you has gone blue-gray, dim, and cold. By 2,000 feet, it is nearly black. This is the twilight zone, and it is the most dangerous stretch of water on Earth. The reason is simple. There is just enough light here to see, but that cuts both ways. Animals hunting in the twilight zone can spot the silhouette of something swimming above them, outlined against the faint glow filtering down from the surface. Predators look up. Prey looks down. And the rules of visibility create an arms race more intense than anything in the sunlit zones above. The biggest threat in the twilight zone is your silhouette. Anything above you can see your shadow against the lighter water overhead. So animals living here evolved a trick called counter-illumination. They grow rows of tiny light-producing organs along their bellies. These organs glow at exactly the same brightness and color as the faint surface light above. From below, a fish using counter-illumination looks like the water itself. The silhouette disappears. Hatchetfish are the masters of this technique. They are small fish shaped like a hatchet blade, with bodies so thin they nearly vanish when viewed from the side. Their undersides are covered in light organs tuned to match the exact color of twilight zone light. From below, looking up, a hatchetfish is essentially invisible against the glow of the water above it. The twilight zone is also where the deep sea's daily migration happens, one of the largest animal movements on the planet. Every morning, billions of animals drop from the twilight zone down into the midnight zone to hide in the darkness during daylight hours. Every evening, they rise back up to feed in the richer waters closer to the surface. The round trip covers hundreds of feet, twice a day, every day. Scientists estimate the combined mass of all these migrating animals is enormous, a living pulse that moves through the ocean on a daily schedule, timed to the sun they never actually see. Some animals in the twilight zone have solved the visibility problem in the opposite direction entirely. Instead of becoming invisible, they became mirrors. The saber-tooth fish, also called the fangtooth, has scales so reflective they act like a disco ball. Light bounces off in every direction rather than creating a solid reflection, making it nearly impossible for predators to lock onto a clear image of the fish from any angle. Add a mouthful of fangs so large the fish cannot fully close its jaws, and you have one of the more unsettling animals in the twilight zone. Food in the twilight zone is richer than in the zones below, but the hunting is harder because prey has evolved so many ways to be invisible. This forces predators to become creative, fast, and equipped with weapons that work in near darkness. The weapons get stranger the deeper you go. And at the exact border between the twilight zone and the midnight zone, one particular predator has developed a weapon so effective and so disturbing that it changed how scientists think about predator-prey relationships entirely. It carries the weapon in front of its own face, and it glows. Turn off every light in the room you are in, seal the windows, block every crack under the door. Sit in total darkness for 60 seconds. You will notice your brain starts filling in shapes that are not there, trying to make sense of the nothing your eyes are seeing. Now imagine that same darkness, but you are inside it permanently. The darkness is three-dimensional in every direction, and something nearby is glowing. In the deep ocean, that glow is almost never safe. Scientists estimate that over 75% of all deep-sea animals produce their own light through a process called bioluminescence. The chemical reaction is straightforward. A molecule called luciferin reacts with oxygen, and the reaction releases energy as light instead of heat. Animals control this reaction through enzymes, switching their light on and off the way you flip a switch. The light is almost always blue or blue-green, and that is intentional. Blue light travels further through water than any other wavelength. Red light fades within a few feet. Blue can travel hundreds of feet through clear ocean water, making it the only color worth producing in the deep sea. Some animals do not produce their own light at all. Instead, they cultivate colonies of bioluminescent bacteria inside specialized organs in their bodies. The bacteria glow constantly. The animal controls what is visible by opening or closing a shutter over the organ, like a camera aperture. The anglerfish uses exactly this system for its lure. But the uses of bioluminescence go far beyond simple hunting. Some squid use light for camouflage. They match the faint downwelling light from above with light organs on their undersides, erasing their own shadow. The Humboldt squid uses rapid pulses of light across its skin to communicate with other squid during a hunt, coordinating attacks in real time through a language made entirely of light. Some animals use bioluminescence as an alarm system. When startled by a predator, certain deep-sea animals release a cloud of glowing material into the water. This cloud lights up the predator, making it visible to everything else nearby. The predator suddenly becomes the prey. Scientists call this a burglar alarm effect. The vampire squid takes this to an extreme. When threatened, it does not squirt dark ink the way shallow water squid do. Instead, it releases a cloud of glowing blue mucus from the tips of its arms. The cloud hangs in the water, pulsing with light, while the vampire squid retreats into darkness. Any predator chasing it gets blinded by the glow and loses the target. There are also animals that use bioluminescence to lure mates. Deep-sea ostracods, which are tiny shrimp-like crustaceans, produce precise sequences of glowing pulses to attract females. Each species has its own distinct pattern, like a biological Morse code. Getting the pattern wrong means no mate. Getting it right in the wrong neighborhood means attracting the wrong species, some of which are predators. The deep sea is full of light. It just carries no warmth, no safety, and almost no honest information. Every glow down here means something, and most of what it means is danger. The anglerfish has taken that danger and turned it into the most effective trap in the entire ocean. Picture yourself lost in the dark, completely dark. You have not eaten in weeks. Your body is running on almost nothing. Then, somewhere ahead of you, a small light appears, warm, pulsing, drifting slowly. It is the only thing you can see. Your brain says, investigate. That is the last decision many deep-sea creatures ever make. The female anglerfish is one of the most effective predators in the ocean, and she does almost no work to hunt. She simply exists, and her prey comes to her. On top of her head, growing like a fishing rod from her skull, is a modified spine tipped with a small glowing bulb called the esker. This bulb contains colonies of bioluminescent bacteria that glow continuously. The anglerfish controls how much light escapes by constricting or relaxing the tissue around the bulb, making it pulse, flicker, or go dark on command. In the absolute blackness of the midnight zone, this tiny glow is visible to other animals from a long distance. The light pulses in slow, irregular rhythms. It moves gently with the water current. To any small fish, shrimp, or squid searching desperately for food in the darkness, it looks almost alive. It looks like a tiny glowing organism drifting through the water. An easy meal. The prey swims closer. The anglerfish sits completely still. Her massive jaws hang loose and open. Her body is mostly mouth. Some species have jaws so wide that the fully opened mouth creates a circular gap wider than the fish's own body length. Her teeth curve inward, needle-thin and translucent, almost invisible until they move. The prey gets within range. What happens next takes less than 1/10 of a second. The anglerfish snaps her jaws forward, in a motion so fast, it creates a small pressure wave in the water. The rush of water sucks the prey in before it can react. The inward curving teeth close around it, preventing any escape. The prey is already swallowed before it has processed what happened. Scientists studying high-speed footage of anglerfish strikes found that the jaw movement is so rapid it barely registers as motion. The jaws open and close again faster than a human eye can track without a slow-motion camera. What makes the anglerfish's system particularly impressive is its efficiency. She burns almost no energy hunting. She waits. The light does the work. In an environment where calories are desperately scarce, this is a survival strategy that borders on genius, a predator that never chases, never misses, barely moves. Different anglerfish species have evolved slightly different lure shapes and glow patterns. Some look like tiny fish. Some look like glowing worms. Some pulse in specific rhythms that mimic the movement patterns of common prey. The lure has evolved to be maximally convincing for whatever prey exists in that particular zone. And here is the detail that should unsettle you slightly. The bacteria inside the esker are not produced by the anglerfish herself. She recruits them from the surrounding water when she is young, cultivating a colony of living light producers inside a specialized organ in her lure. The relationship is permanent. The bacteria cannot leave. The anglerfish cannot replace them. If the bacteria die, the lure goes dark, and the anglerfish loses her only hunting weapon. She carries living prisoners in her face to keep the light on. But the lure is only the beginning of what makes this animal extraordinary. The mouth it feeds is something else entirely. Most animals have jaws that open in proportion to their head. A dog opens its jaw a few inches. A crocodile can open wider, but the mouth still fits within the outline of the skull. The mechanics of a hinged jaw have limits. Bones connect at joints, and joints only allow so much movement. The deep-sea anglerfish ignored all of those limits. Several species of anglerfish have evolved jaw structures and stomach walls that allow them to consume prey significantly larger than their own bodies. This sounds impossible until you understand the anatomy involved. The anglerfish jaw does not operate on a simple hinge. The bones of the jaw are loosely connected with ligaments that stretch. The lower jaw can drop almost straight down, creating a gap that looks nothing like a normal mouth. It looks like a cave opening in the front of the fish. The teeth line the edges of this gap, angled backwards so anything that enters cannot work its way back out. The stomach wall is made of extremely elastic tissue, more like a balloon than a rigid organ. When the anglerfish swallows large prey, the stomach expands outward to accommodate it. The body of the fish balloons around the meal. Scientists have found anglerfish with prey inside them that created a visible bulge in the fish's body, a shape stretching the skin outward in every direction. One species, sometimes called the black sea devil, has been documented swallowing prey over twice its own length. The fish essentially becomes a swimming stomach for the duration of digestion. Its movements slow. It sinks deeper. It processes the meal over days or even weeks. This feeding strategy makes complete sense in the deep ocean. Food arrives unpredictably and infrequently. When a meal presents itself, an animal cannot afford to pass it up because it is too large. The anglerfish solves this by making size irrelevant. Anything that comes close enough gets eaten, regardless of what it looks like. The teeth deserve a separate mention. Under a microscope, anglerfish teeth are deeply unsettling. They are long, thin, and slightly curved, like hypodermic needles made of bone. Many are partly transparent. They sit at angles that allow them to collapse backward when prey enters the mouth, but spring back upright when anything tries to push outward. The mouth is a one-way door. Some anglerfish teeth are so long that the fish cannot close its mouth completely. The teeth interlock like the tines of two forks pushed together. When the jaws are shut, the longest teeth push through gaps between the teeth on the opposite jaw, protruding slightly outside the closed mouth. An anglerfish at rest, with its mouth closed, still looks like it is in the middle of swallowing something. What this animal represents is the deep ocean's answer to scarcity taken to a logical extreme. Build a mouth capable of eating anything. Make the stomach expandable. Make the teeth inescapable. Hang a glowing light in front of it. And wait. The anglerfish is everywhere in the midnight zone, but she is rarely alone down there. Other hunters patrol the same darkness, and they have developed their own extreme solutions to the problem of finding and eating whatever they can catch. Some of those solutions involve bodies that expand to sizes that seem physically impossible. Imagine your school cafeteria, but the food only arrives randomly. Sometimes a meal shows up every few days. Sometimes nothing comes for 3 months. You have no way of knowing when the next delivery will happen. Your survival depends entirely on being ready to eat as much as possible when food appears, and burning as little energy as possible while you wait. This is the daily reality for almost every animal below 3,000 feet. The deep ocean is a food desert. The sun-powered food chains of the surface zones produce an enormous amount of biological material, but almost none of it reaches the deep sea intact. Organic particles drift down from above, but most get consumed by organisms in the twilight zone before they sink far enough. By the time any food particle reaches the midnight zone or below, it has passed through multiple sets of jaws and been stripped of most of its energy. What reaches the deep sea floor is mostly fragments, tiny particles of dead organisms, microscopic bits of organic material, and occasionally something larger, a dead fish, a sunken piece of wood, or the rare massive prize of a whale carcass. Scientists call the constant slow rain of tiny particles marine snow. Under a flashlight, it looks like white specks drifting down through the darkness. Animals at depth have adapted to this scarcity in 2 major ways. The first is extreme metabolic slowdown. Deep-sea fish have heart rates and metabolisms that run at a fraction of the pace of surface fish the same size. Their muscles contract more slowly. Their digestive systems process food over much longer periods. A fish the size of your forearm in the deep ocean might have a metabolic rate 10 times lower than a comparably sized fish near the surface. This means it burns almost nothing just staying alive, making each rare meal last far longer. The second adaptation is opportunistic eating. Deep-sea predators and scavengers eat whatever they find, whenever they find it. They cannot afford to be selective. A deep-sea fish that turns down a meal because the prey is slightly too large, or slightly the wrong type, will likely not get another opportunity for weeks. This drives the evolution of expandable stomachs, enormous jaws, and highly sensitive chemical detectors that can smell a meal from a significant distance. The giant isopod, a crustacean that resembles a roly-poly bug scaled up to the size of a football, has been observed going over 5 years in captivity without eating anything at all. Its metabolism drops so low that its caloric needs become almost unmeasurable. It simply waits. Scientists believe wild giant isopods regularly go months between meals on the deep-sea floor, surviving on whatever organic material they can find. The chemical sense of deep-sea scavengers is extraordinary. Certain species of amphipod, tiny shrimp-like crustaceans, can detect the chemical signals of a dead whale from miles away. They navigate toward it through total darkness using scent alone, arriving at a carcass within hours of it hitting the sea floor. In a food desert, speed to the prize is everything. The scarcity of food also explains one of the strangest body features of the deep ocean: the ability to eat prey larger than yourself. When food is this rare, the animal that can eat the biggest meal wins, regardless of how physically extreme that requires the body to become. That principle pushed one particular eel to develop a solution so extreme it barely looks like a fish anymore. Picture a black umbrella. Now imagine that umbrella has a long, thin tail trailing behind it, and 2 tiny eyes near the tip. The umbrella is the mouth, the tail is the body, and the whole thing is alive, hunting in the darkness at over 3,000 feet below sea level. That is roughly what a gulper eel looks like. The gulper eel is one of the most extreme feeding machines the deep ocean has produced. Its scientific name, Eurypharynx pelicanoides, references the pelican. The gulper eel is mostly mouth, but unlike a pelican, the gulper eel's mouth can open so wide that the fish's head disappears inside its own gape. The mechanics, start at the jaw. The gulper eel's lower jaw is loosely hinged and can swing down and forward dramatically, creating a mouth cavity that takes up a significant portion of the animal's total body volume when fully open. The jaw bones are long, lightweight, and flexible. There is almost no muscle mass in the head beyond what is needed to close the jaw after the prey is inside. Inside this enormous mouth sits a small pink glowing organ at the tip of the tail, which the gulper eel is thought to use as a lure in a similar fashion to the anglerfish. The eel curves its long tail forward, dangling the glowing tip in front of its open mouth. When something swims toward the light and enters the mouth cavity, the jaw snaps shut. After capture, the real engineering begins. The gulper eel's stomach is made of highly elastic tissue that can stretch dramatically in all directions. As the eel swallows its prey, the stomach walls expand outward around it. Scientists have found gulper eels with prey inside them that expanded the eel's midsection to several times its normal diameter, creating a round, balloon-like bulge in what is otherwise a thin eel-like body. One specimen was recovered with a fish inside it, significantly larger than the eel's head. The only way that meal fit was because the stomach expanded around it from every direction simultaneously, the way a balloon stretches around air when you blow into it. This kind of expansion has a cost. A gulper eel that has just swallowed a very large meal is temporarily slower and more vulnerable. It cannot maneuver quickly with a massive bulge weighing it down. It sinks deeper into the water column, conserving energy while digestion begins. Over the course of days, digestive acids and enzymes break the prey down, and the stomach gradually returns to its normal shape as the meal is absorbed. In the deep ocean, this trade-off is worth it every time. A single large meal can sustain a gulper eel for weeks or months. The temporary vulnerability of being slower and heavier is a small price for that kind of caloric reserve. The gulper eel is rarely visible on film because it lives in deep, dark water and tends to avoid lights. Scientists have had to piece together its behavior from specimens caught in deep-sea trawling nets and from rare remotely operated vehicle footage. What that footage shows is an animal that moves in slow, deliberate sweeps through the darkness, mouth partly open, tail glowing, patient in a way that only an animal adapted to long waits can be. Some animals in the deep ocean solve the problem of seeing in total darkness in a direction no one expected. Their solution involves looking through their own skulls. Scientists lowering a camera into the Pacific Ocean at about 2,000 feet captured footage of a fish that stopped them cold. The fish had a completely transparent head. Inside the clear dome of its skull, two glowing green cylinders sat pointing straight upward. The fish swam calmly through the dark water, its brain and sensory organs fully visible through the clear tissue of its own head. The barrel-eye fish had been known to scientists for decades, but almost every specimen ever collected had collapsed and lost its transparent dome during the process of being brought to the surface. For years, scientists studied dead specimens with ruined heads and assumed the green cylinders were eyes. In living footage, it became clear those cylinders could rotate, pointing upward to scan the water above, or forward to focus on something directly ahead. The entire design of this animal is built around one single problem: finding food above you, in near total darkness. The barrel-eye fish lives in the twilight zone, where a very faint light still filters down from above. Any animal swimming above the barrel-eye, even at significant distance, casts an extremely faint silhouette against that dim light. The barrel-eye's massive upward-pointing eyes are extraordinarily sensitive to exactly this kind of faint contrast. The tubular shape of the eyes concentrates incoming light onto a dense cluster of light-sensitive cells at the back of each eye, allowing the fish to detect shadows that would be invisible to almost any other creature. The transparent head serves a second function. The barrel eye often feeds by stealing prey from the tentacles of siphonophores, colonial organisms that trail long, stinging tentacles through the water. To do this, the barrel eye has to maneuver carefully through tangles of tentacles that would sting and damage exposed eyes. The fluid-filled transparent dome shields its eyes from stings, acting like a built-in pair of goggles. The fish itself is small, roughly 6 inches long. Its body below the transparent dome is an unremarkable dark shape, but the head design concentrates so much visual sensitivity upward that the barrel eye can detect faint silhouettes of tiny shrimp or small fish from distances that would be functionally invisible to other animals. When it spots a target above, it tilts its body upward until it is nearly vertical in the water, then slowly ascends toward the silhouette. Its movements are deliberate and slow, burning as little energy as possible. The eyes track the target all the way up. When it is close enough, it strikes. The green color of its eyes comes from a yellow pigment filter in the lens. Scientists believe this filter blocks out the faint blue bioluminescent light produced by other organisms in the water, preventing the fish from confusing those light sources with the real signal it is looking for, the dim filtered sunlight from above. Every part of this fish solves exactly one problem in the most efficient way possible. The transparent skull protects without blocking. The tubular eyes detect without missing. The yellow filter clarifies without removing useful light. In the deep ocean, every design feature has to earn its place. The barrel-eyed transparent head is a solution so specific and so elegant that it took scientists decades of looking at dead specimens to understand what it actually did. And there are creatures below the barrel-eyed depth that use light in ways that are even harder to explain. The name sounds like something from a horror film. The appearance backs it up, but the vampire squid is not actually a squid, and it does not drink blood. What it does instead is considerably stranger. The vampire squid belongs to its own separate group entirely, sitting between squids and octopuses on the tree of life. It lives in the oxygen minimum zone, a layer of water between about 2,000 and 3,000 feet, where oxygen levels drop so low that most animals cannot survive there at all. The vampire squid not only survives, but thrives, because its oxygen-depleted home keeps most predators away. Its body is deep red to black, with a cloak of webbing connecting its 8 arms. When threatened, it pulls this cloak up over its body, inverting itself into a spiky ball covered in sharp-looking projections. The inside of the cloak is covered in white spines called cirri, spread wide, with its 2 large blue eyes reflecting any available light. It looks designed to frighten, but its real defense is the most unusual. Unlike true squids, the vampire squid has lost its ink sac entirely over millions of years of evolution. In the deep ocean, shooting a cloud of dark ink does nothing in absolute darkness. Darkness is already the environment. A dark cloud in dark water is useless. Instead, the vampire squid fires a cloud of glowing mucus from the tips of its arms. This cloud is laced with thousands of tiny bioluminescent particles that pulse and glow with blue light. The cloud hangs in the water for up to 10 minutes, pulsing steadily. To any predator chasing the squid, the glowing cloud is blinding and disorienting. The vampire squid, meanwhile, has gone dark entirely, pulling its arms in and stopping its own bioluminescence, retreating into the surrounding blackness, while the predator fixates on the glowing cloud. The vampire squid does not hunt like most cephalopods. It is a slow swimmer and does not chase prey. Instead, it uses 2 long, thin filaments that extend from between its arms and drift outward through the water. These filaments are coated in tiny hairs that collect particles of marine snow, dead organic material, and bacteria drifting down from above. The vampire squid reels the filaments back in and coats the collected material in mucus, forming small food packages that it then eats. This feeding strategy is almost unknown elsewhere in the cephalopod world. Squids and octopuses are hunters. They chase prey, grab it with arms covered in suckers, and tear it apart with a sharp beak. The vampire squid has abandoned all of that in favor of a slow, passive collection of whatever drifts down from above. Scientists believe this shift happened because the oxygen minimum zone is too low in energy for active hunting. Moving fast burns too much oxygen. So the vampire squid evolved to barely move at all, collecting food that comes to it, defending itself with light and camouflage, rather than speed or aggression. The result is an animal that has been living essentially unchanged for over 300 million years. The deep ocean preserved it. Its predators cannot breathe down there, and it found a food source that requires almost no effort to collect. Something even stranger about this ocean has to do with size. The deeper you go, the bigger some animals grow, and the reason scientists still cannot fully explain why. Take a roly-poly bug, the small grey ones that curl into a ball when you touch them. They are usually about half an inch long. Now imagine finding one the size of a football in the deep ocean. That is not an exaggeration. That is a giant isopod, and it is one of the most striking examples of a real biological pattern called abyssal gigantism. The rule goes like this. As you go deeper into the ocean, certain types of animals grow dramatically larger than their shallow water relatives. Amphipods, which are tiny shrimp-like crustaceans less than half an inch long near the surface, have been found in deep ocean trenches reaching over 11 inches in length. Sea spiders, normally spider-sized near the surface, grow to the size of dinner plates in the Antarctic deep sea. The giant isopod reaches over 1.5 feet in length. Nobody is entirely sure why this happens. Several explanations have been proposed, and none of them alone seems to cover every case. One idea connects to cold water. The deep ocean is just a few degrees above freezing almost everywhere. Cold water slows metabolism dramatically, which means animals grow more slowly. Growing slowly and living a long time tends to produce larger final body sizes, the same way tortoises, which have slow metabolisms, outlive and outgrow faster metabolizing animals of similar starting sizes. Another idea involves oxygen. Cold water holds more dissolved oxygen than warm water. Higher available oxygen at the cellular level may allow tissues to grow larger without being limited by the efficiency of their respiratory systems. A third possibility focuses on predation pressure. Near the surface, small invertebrates get eaten constantly. Staying small and fast is a survival strategy when predators are everywhere. Deep in the ocean, predators are fewer and slower. There is less pressure to stay small. Animals that grow larger face less competition and fewer threats, so those genes get passed on. Some scientists think all three factors contribute simultaneously, which is why the pattern appears so consistently across many different animal groups and so many different ocean locations. Whatever the cause, the result is an ocean where familiar creatures become unfamiliar at depth. The same body plan, scaled to proportions that change how the animal interacts with everything around it. A shrimp the size of your forearm is a different kind of animal than one the size of your fingernail, even if the basic design is identical. The giant isopod demonstrates this shift in unsettling ways. It is clearly recognizable as a roly-poly bug. The segmented armor, the 7 pairs of legs, the antennae, all present and correct. But at 18 inches long, rolling through the deep-sea floor on legs thick as your fingers, it reads as something from a different world entirely. And the giant isopod is small compared to what abyssal giantism has produced in the water above the seafloor. Because the same principle that inflated a roly-poly bug to football size also produced something that carries eyes the size of dinner plates and trails arms that can grab prey from 30 feet away. For most of human history, the giant squid was a monster. Sailors in the North Atlantic reported massive tentacles breaking the surface. Bodies of giant squid occasionally washed ashore, half-rotted and enormous. The Kraken of Norse mythology almost certainly came from encounters with real animals. But for centuries, no one had ever seen a living adult giant squid in its natural habitat. Then, in 2004, a Japanese research team lowered a camera baited with a smaller squid into the Pacific Ocean at about 3,000 feet. They waited. After several hours, something took the bait. The camera captured the first photographs ever taken of a living giant squid attacking prey in the wild. The animal was enormous. It left behind an 8-inch tentacle club when it tore itself free from the hook. The giant squid is the largest invertebrate on Earth. Females reach up to 40 feet in total length, counting the 2 long feeding tentacles that extend beyond the 8 main arms. Males are smaller, reaching about 30 feet. To put the size in context, 40 feet is roughly the length of a school bus. Its eyes are the largest of any animal on the planet. Each eye reaches up to 10 inches in diameter, about the size of a dinner plate. These enormous eyes evolved to detect the faint bioluminescent flashes produced by sperm whales hunting in deep water. A sperm whale chasing a giant squid disturbs the surrounding bioluminescent organisms, creating flashes of light that the squid can see from significant distances, giving it time to react and escape. The arms of the giant squid are lined with suckers that have sharp serrated edges, more like teeth than suction cups. These toothed suckers can grip prey and cut into flesh simultaneously. Sperm whales carry circular scars on their skin from giant squid arms wrapped around them during underwater battles, a record of hunts that happen in total darkness at depths humans have barely visited. Scientists know almost nothing about how giant squid live, reproduce, or spend most of their time. Adults are almost never observed in the wild. What researchers know comes from specimens caught in fishing nets, from stomach contents found inside sperm whales, and from occasional washed-up carcasses. The 2004 footage was historic precisely because observing one in its natural habitat is so extraordinarily rare. The giant squid lives primarily in the twilight and midnight zones, between about 1,000 and 3,000 feet. It likely feeds on deep-sea fish and smaller squid, using its 2 long tentacles to strike from a distance and drag prey towards its beak. A hard, sharp structure at the center of its arms, strong enough to cut through bone. Despite its size, it is not the largest squid on the planet. The colossal squid, found in Antarctic waters, reaches comparable lengths and has a heavier body mass, with hooks rather than toothed suckers on its arms. But even less is known about the colossal squid than the giant. The ocean's largest invertebrates remain some of the least understood animals on the planet, because reaching them alive and observing them without disturbing their behavior requires technology that barely exists yet. But the ocean's most extreme size records are not held by soft-bodied animals. They are held by something that looks completely familiar, just at a scale that stops making sense. Walk into any damp garden and lift a stone. Underneath, you will probably find roly-poly bugs, those small grey crustaceans that curl into a perfect ball the moment they sense a threat. They are harmless, slow, and unremarkable. Most people pay them no attention. Now place that same animal in the deep ocean. Give it hundreds of millions of years to grow. Let the cold water slow its metabolism to almost nothing. Let the pressure of the deep sea shape its armor. The result is the giant isopod, and finding one in person has startled more than a few deep-sea researchers who thought they knew what to expect. Giant isopods live on the seafloor between about 550 feet and about 7,000 feet down. They are genuine giants, reaching up to 18 inches in length and weighing several pounds. Their bodies are covered in rigid, overlapping armor plates, and they can roll into a tight sphere when threatened, exactly like their smaller relatives, just at a scale that is genuinely alarming. They are scavengers. Their role in the deep sea is to find dead animals on the seafloor and consume them. They have been documented feeding on dead fish, whale carcasses, and anything organic that sinks to the bottom. Their mouthparts are designed for cutting and scraping, capable of breaking through tough skin and even cartilage to reach the tissue underneath. In an environment where food arrives unpredictably, giant isopods have developed one of the most extreme fasting abilities of any animal known to science. In captivity, One individual went over 5 years without eating anything at all. No food, no supplements, just water. After 5 years, it was still alive. Its metabolism had slowed to a point where caloric consumption became almost undetectable. When it finally died, it was from refusing food offered to it, not from starvation. In the wild, giant isopods likely experience long stretches between meals, sometimes months, punctuated by frenzied feeding events when something large and dead arrives on the sea floor. Their bodies are adapted to both extremes. They can eat rapidly and consume large quantities when food is available, and they can then wait out an indefinite fast with no apparent distress. Their compound eyes are large relative to their body size, well adapted to detecting movement and contrast in the low-light conditions of the upper deep sea. They are not fast movers, but in an environment where speed matters less than endurance and patience. That is barely a disadvantage. Scientists are genuinely interested in the giant isopod's metabolism as a model for understanding biological survival under extreme scarcity. An organism that can function normally and survive for years on essentially no energy input represents a biological efficiency that human technology cannot yet match or fully explain. But the giant isopod stays mostly on the sea floor. Some other animals manage a double life, spending their nights near the surface and their days descending deeper than most submarines can follow. Most sharks live and hunt near the surface. They follow fish schools, patrol reef edges, and cruise the sunlit zones where prey is abundant. The six-gill shark does something different. Every morning, as sunlight begins to filter down through the upper ocean, the six-gill drops away from the surface and descends into deep water. By midday, it sits over a mile down in the darkness. Then, every evening it rises again. The blunt-nosed six-gill shark is one of the largest predatory sharks on the planet, reaching up to 15 feet in length and weighing over half a ton. It gets its name from a feature that sets it apart from nearly every other living shark. While almost all modern sharks have 5 gill slits on each side of their head, the six-gill has 6. This is an ancient trait. The six-gill shark belongs to a lineage that predates the dinosaurs, a design that has barely changed in hundreds of millions of years. It hunts at depth with sensory tools built for the dark. Its eyes are large, with a structure called a tapetum lucidum behind the retina, a reflective layer that bounces incoming light back through the eye a second time, doubling the effective sensitivity. This is the same structure that makes a cat's eyes glow in the dark. In the near-total darkness of deep water, it lets the six-gill detect the faintest movement or contrast. The six-gill also has a highly developed lateral line, a sensory system that runs along both sides of its body and detects pressure changes in the water. A fish 20 feet away, making tiny movements in the water, creates pressure waves that the six-gill can feel through its lateral line. At depth, where vision fails completely, this system becomes the primary hunting tool. During its deep dives, the six-gill preys on animals that live in the darkness full-time. Deep-sea fish, squid, and carrion on the seafloor are all targets. Scientists studying six-gill shark behavior using tracking tags found that the daily dive pattern is consistent and predictable. The sharks surface at night, likely because their prey also moves up toward the surface after dark, following the massive daily vertical migration of deep-sea organisms. Then they descend again at dawn. This makes the six-gill one of the few large predators that moves between multiple ocean zones daily, using the deep sea as a daytime refuge and the surface as a nighttime feeding ground. It connects the two worlds in a way that few other large animals manage. Researchers tagging six-gills off the coast of British Columbia tracked individuals diving to depths of over 8,000 feet. At those depths, the pressure would kill an unprotected human instantly. The six-gill descended there and returned to the surface within hours, seemingly unaffected. The six-gill shark is proof that ancient designs can be competitive indefinitely. Its six-gill body plan is hundreds of millions of years old. Every redesign and refinement evolution has tried in sharks over that time has produced animals with 5 gills. The six-gill ignored all of that and kept working just fine in both the deep and the shallow ocean. But there is a shark in the deep ocean with a much more unusual approach to feeding, one that works by taking only small, perfectly circular pieces from animals far larger than itself, and then swimming away, leaving them alive. A sperm whale surfaces in the Pacific Ocean, scarred across its flanks with dozens of perfectly circular wounds, each one roughly 2 inches across. A dolphin swims past with a chunk missing from its side, the edges of the wound clean and smooth. The submarine cable hauled up from the ocean floor has round bite marks punched into its rubber coating. All of it came from a shark less than 20 inches long. The cookie cutter shark is one of the strangest predators in the ocean, and for decades, scientists could not figure out what was making those circular wounds on large marine animals. The bites were too clean, too perfectly round, and too small to match any known predator. When they finally identified the culprit, almost nobody believed it at first. The cookie cutter shark lives in the open ocean between about 270 feet and 11,500 feet deep. It migrates upward at night to follow prey closer to the surface, then descends again during the day, a daily vertical migration similar to the six-gill, but covering an even wider range. It is small, cigar-shaped and brown, with a darker collar around its neck that researchers believe helps it blend in from below. Its lips form a tight, circular seal around its mouth. The lower jaw carries a row of large, triangular interlocked teeth that form a nearly continuous blade around the entire lower jaw. When the cookie cutter latches onto a larger animal, it creates a suction seal with its lips and then rotates its entire body while the lower jaw teeth stay fixed. The rotation cuts a plug of flesh out of the host animal the way a cookie cutter punches a shape from dough. Clean edges, perfect circle. Then the shark releases and swims away. The victim survives. The wound is not life-threatening to something the size of a whale or a large dolphin, but the cookie cutter gets a meal that requires almost no risk. It never has to fight an animal its own size. It attacks animals dozens of times larger and escapes before they can react. Scientists studying cookie cutter bite patterns have found their marks on an extraordinary range of animals. Sperm whales, great white sharks, dolphins, seals, mako sharks, and even a human long-distance swimmer have all carried cookie cutter wounds. The shark shows no preference based on prey species. If it is large, warm, and within range, the cookie cutter will try. The bioluminescent organs covering the cookie cutter's underside play a key role in hunting. Scientists believe the dark collar around its neck looks like a small fish when viewed from below against the faint surface light. Larger predators may approach to investigate what looks like easy prey, and then the cookie cutter attacks them instead, reversing the predator-prey relationship completely. The cookie cutter's teeth are replaced in entire rows at once, rather than one at a time. The shark swallows its own shed teeth, likely to reclaim the calcium used to build them, an efficient recycling system in an environment where nutrients are precious. Here is what makes the cookie cutter genuinely hard to dismiss as just a minor curiosity. A great white shark, one of the most feared predators in the ocean, has been found carrying cookie cutter wounds. The ocean's apex predator, bearing bite marks from something the length of a school ruler. Size apparently is optional when your strategy is good enough. But the deep ocean also produces predators that take the opposite approach, making themselves huge and then eating prey through sheer stomach expansion. Hold your hand flat. The black swallower, fully grown, fits comfortably in your palm. It reaches about 10 inches in length and weighs almost nothing. It lives in the midnight zone, somewhere between 2,300 feet and 9,000 feet below the surface, drifting through total darkness in one of the least productive environments on Earth. And it routinely eats fish more than twice its own length and 10 times its own body weight. The black swallower's stomach has no structural rigidity at all. The walls are made of tissue that stretches with essentially no resistance, the biological equivalent of a thin rubber sac. When the fish encounters prey too large to swallow without expansion, it begins a process that looks physically impossible from the outside. It grabs the prey by the tail and walks its jaws forward, pulling the prey in bite by bite. Its interlocking teeth prevent the prey from backing out as the jaws advance, and it slowly works the entire body of the larger fish into its own stomach. The stomach expands around each section as it enters, stretching outward from the body wall. By the end, the black swallower's belly extends below it, like a transparent sack, so stretched that the skin becomes nearly see-through, and the prey animal is clearly visible coiled inside it. Scientists know this happens because specimens have been found floating at the surface, dead, with prey still visible in their expanded stomachs. The black swallow occasionally miscalculates. It swallows prey so large that the decomposition of the prey inside the stomach releases gases faster than the fish can process the meal. The expanding gases force the fish upward, out of the midnight zone, all the way to the surface, where the pressure change and the temperature shift kill it. The dead fish washes ashore or gets spotted by researchers, stomach bulging, prey identifiable inside. This is how scientists confirmed the behavior. The fish was caught by its own ambition. Outside of these accidental strandings, the black swallower is almost never seen. It has no commercial value, it lives at depths that require expensive equipment to reach, and it produces no bioluminescence that would make it visible on camera at depth. Most of what is known about its behavior comes from dead specimens and from the mathematical impossibility of the stomach contents relative to the fish's body size. Its teeth are long, curved, and fang-like, designed to grip prey and prevent escape while the jaws walk forward. The lower jaw can extend slightly forward of the upper, helping it gain purchase on prey wider than its own head. The eyes are small, suggesting it does not rely primarily on vision to hunt, likely using chemical sensing or pressure detection to locate prey in total darkness. The black swallower represents the deep ocean's logic taken to its endpoint. When food is unpredictable, the animal that can eat the largest meal relative to its own size wins. Evolution kept pushing the stomach walls thinner and more elastic until a 10-inch fish became capable of swallowing a 25-inch meal whole. In a place where eating is rare and survival depends on not wasting opportunity, the black swallower has no room for caution. But some animals in the deep ocean have taken the opposite strategy for their mouths, growing jaws that curve away from the prey rather than toward it, and somehow catching more food that way. Most predators have jaws that close together. That is the fundamental logic of a mouth. Two parts that come together to grip something. The snipe eel looked at that logic and rejected it entirely. The snipe eel lives between about 300 feet and 6,500 feet below the surface, in the twilight and midnight zones. It is a thin, ribbon-like eel that can reach up to 5 feet in length, but most of that length is a long, tapering tail. Its body has almost no mass at all. Under a light, it looks fragile, almost decorative, like something that should not survive in the deep ocean. Then you see the jaws. The snipe eel's upper and lower jaws both curve upward and away from each other at their tips, like two fishing hooks bent in opposite directions. When the mouth is closed, the tips of the jaws do not meet at all. They point away from each other, leaving a gap at the front of the mouth even when the fish is biting down. To a human eye, it looks broken. It looks like a developmental mistake. It is one of the most effective feeding tools in the deep ocean. The snipe eel feeds almost entirely on shrimp. Deep-sea shrimp have long antennae that trail backward behind their bodies as they swim. These antennae are thin, hair-like, and they extend several body lengths behind the shrimp. When a shrimp swims through the water, those antennae fan out in a wide spread behind it. The snipe eel does not chase shrimp. It swims with its mouth open through patches of water where shrimp are present, and the curving hooked tips of its jaws snag the shrimp's trailing antennae. The hooks catch the antennae passively, without any active striking motion. The eel continues swimming. The caught antennae drag the shrimp toward the mouth, and the shrimp gets reeled in without the eel ever having to make a precise strike. The curving jaws are the net, the eel is the frame. This passive catching method means the snipe eel burns almost no energy hunting. It does not need to see its prey clearly. It does not need to aim. It does not need speed or strength. It sweeps through the water and collects whatever the hooks catch, a fishing strategy rather than a hunting strategy. Male and female snipe eels are so different from each other that early scientists classified them as completely separate species. The male has a shorter snout, smaller jaws, and different proportions from the female. Males also undergo dramatic physical changes as they mature. Their teeth fall out as they age, their jaws shorten and change shape, their digestive systems shrink. Scientists believe that as males reach reproductive maturity, they stop eating entirely, surviving on stored energy reserves while they search for females to mate with. After mating, they die. The female continues eating and can live considerably longer. In the deep ocean, where every calorie counts and finding a mate is nearly impossible, the male snipe eel resolves both problems the same way. It stops needing to eat, spends all remaining energy on reproduction, and ends there. Most deep-sea animals see almost nothing in the dark, but the ones that do see have developed vision systems that work in ways no surface animal has ever needed to invent. Human vision runs on 3 types of cells that each detect a different color of light: red, green, and blue. Combined, they produce the full range of color you see every day. This system works well in sunlight, where all wavelengths are available. In the deep ocean, it would be nearly useless. Below a few hundred feet, only blue light remains. Red is gone, green fades quickly. The entire visual spectrum collapses down to a narrow band of blue-green wavelengths that can still penetrate seawater at depth. Any animal that kept a full 3-color vision system would be paying the biological cost of maintaining 3 types of cells, while only 1 type was ever doing any work. Deep-sea animals, streamlined. Most fish in the midnight zone have retinas dominated almost entirely by a single type of cell, rod cells, which detect light intensity rather than color. Color vision becomes irrelevant in a world with no color. What matters is detecting contrast, movement, and the faint glow of bioluminescent organisms in otherwise total darkness. Rod cells packed densely into the retina, sometimes in multiple layers, allow deep-sea fish to detect extraordinarily faint light levels that would be invisible to any surface animal. The dragonfish pushed this further. Its retina contains a pigment that is sensitive to red light. Red light does not exist naturally in the deep ocean, so this seems pointless at first. But the dragonfish also produces red bioluminescence from organs near its eyes. It can project a beam of red light forward like a flashlight, illuminating prey in front of it. The prey, which has evolved to be invisible in blue light, has no red sensing pigment and cannot see the red beam at all. The dragonfish sees everything. The prey sees nothing. It is a private searchlight that only one animal can detect. Some deep-sea crustaceans and mantis shrimp taken from moderate depths have been found with more types of light-detecting cells than humans, capable of seeing into the ultraviolet range. This extended vision likely helps them detect the fluorescent markings some organisms produce on their shells and bodies, patterns invisible to most predators. The giant squid's enormous eyes solve a completely different problem. At 10 inches across, they gather so much light that the squid can detect the faint bioluminescent flashes produced when a sperm whale moves through the water far away. The whale disturbs tiny bioluminescent plankton as it swims, creating flashes of light. The squid reads these flashes as a warning sign of an approaching predator and moves to avoid it. Some deep-sea animals have taken the opposite approach and reduced their eyes to nearly nothing. The gulper eel has tiny eyes relative to its body size. It lives in such complete darkness that large eyes offer no advantage. Instead, it relies on sensing the pressure changes caused by nearby movement, a mechanical sense rather than a visual one. The deep ocean represents the full range of what vision can be pushed to. Hypersensitive rods detecting single photons of light, private red flashlights invisible to prey, eyes the size of dinner plates reading bioluminescent warning signals, and animals that gave up on eyes entirely and replaced them with something more useful. Every visual system down here exists because something was trying to eat something else, and seeing first meant surviving. Some animals decided that rather than improving vision, the best strategy was to stop moving entirely and let the food arrive on its own. At the very bottom of the deep sea, in the near-freezing dark of the abyssal zone, a fish stands on 3 legs. It is not walking, it is standing, motionless, facing into the current, balanced on 2 elongated fin rays from its pectoral fins, and 1 from its tail. The body of the fish hovers above the sea floor, held up by these 3 stiff supports, like a camera on a tripod. Hence the name. The tripod fish can hold this position for extended periods, barely moving. It is not resting. It is hunting. The strategy depends on one simple feature of the deep sea floor. Even at thousands of feet below the surface, there are gentle bottom currents. These currents carry tiny organisms, scraps of organic material, and small creatures drifting along just above the sediment. By standing still and facing directly into the current, the tripod fish positions itself at the end of a long, narrow corridor of flowing water, and anything moving in that current comes directly toward it. Its pectoral fins, the same ones forming 2 of the 3 legs, are also extended forward during this stance. These fins are loaded with sensory cells capable of detecting pressure changes and movement in the water. They act as nets, sweeping a wide area in front of the fish. When a small crustacean or organic particle drifts into range, the fins detect it and the fish snaps forward to take it. The tripod fish essentially turned itself into a passive collector. It positions itself in the current, extends its sensors, and intercepts food that the current delivers to it. The energy cost of this hunting method is extraordinarily low. Standing still on 3 fin rays burns almost nothing. The fins detect prey without the fish needing to move. The strikes are short and quick, then the fish returns to position. Scientists capturing footage of tripod fish were struck by how long an individual could maintain this stance. Minutes passed. The fish did not move. The current continued. Then a small strike, a return to position, and more waiting. The tripod fish is mostly blind. Its eyes are small and functional only at extremely close range. At the depths it inhabits, there is no light source except the rare glow of a bioluminescent organism passing by. Vision offers almost nothing. So the tripod fish invested its evolutionary energy into the pressure-sensing cells of its fins instead. Because the tripod fish is a true fish with a spine, it faces the same pressure challenges as every other vertebrate at depth. Its tissues contain the same protective molecules found in other deep-sea fish. It has a gelatinous quality to its flesh that reduces the structural cost of its body. It is pale, almost white, because producing pigment is a caloric expense that offers no benefit in total darkness. Tripod fish are found in multiple ocean basins around the world, at depths between about 10,000 feet and 15,000 feet. They are among the most widespread deep-sea fish known. The same passive hunting strategy, replicated independently across different populations, across different ocean floors. The simplicity is the point. Do less, burn less, collect what arrives. But on that same ocean floor, something else has found a food source that most predators would never think to eat. Something that treats dead bones as a meal. They have no eyes, no mouth, no stomach, no arms or legs of any kind. They look like a cluster of pink feathers poking out of a surface they seem to have grown directly into, and they are dissolving that surface from the inside out. Zombie worms, formerly called Osedax, which means bone eater in Latin, were first discovered in 2002 when a research submarine found a grey whale skeleton on the floor of Monterey Bay at about 9,800 feet below the surface. The bones were covered in a material that researchers could not identify at first. When they collected samples and examined them, they found worms, hundreds of them, burrowing directly into the whalebone. The worm itself anchors to the bone surface with a root-like structure that spreads down through the bone tissue the way roots of a plant spread through soil. These roots secrete acid. The acid dissolves the bone from the inside, breaking down the calcium and releasing the lipids, the fats, stored inside. The fats are the food. Inside the roots, symbiotic bacteria convert those fats into usable energy for the worm. The worm has no digestive system in any traditional sense. The bacteria do the digestion. The worm is essentially a tube that provides the bacteria with a safe home in exchange for a share of the nutrients produced. What makes zombie worms particularly strange is what the males look like compared to the females. The females are the animals described above, the rooted tubes producing the acid and housing the bacteria. The males are microscopic. They live inside the females, sometimes dozens of them inside a single female individual, doing essentially nothing except providing sperm. They never develop into full animals. They never leave. The male zombie worm spends its entire life inside the female's body, essentially a permanent guest that exists only to reproduce. The bone-eating behavior of Osedax was already known from whale carcasses when scientists began wondering how long these worms had existed. If zombie worms required whale bones, and whales only evolved about 50 million years ago, then the worms should be a relatively recent species. But examination of fossil marine reptile bones from over 100 million years ago showed identical boring patterns in the bone structure. Something was dissolving marine reptile bones long before whales existed. Zombie worms, or something very much like them, have been processing marine vertebrate bones since the age of dinosaurs. A carcass that attracts zombie worms is already in the late stages of a much longer process. The worms arrive last, after the scavengers and the bacteria have done their work. What they consume is the skeleton itself, the last storage of organic material in a body that has already given everything else to the deep-sea ecosystem. And the whale fall that creates all of this, the entire civilization of scavengers, bacteria and worms, begins with a single, enormous death. A blue whale dies somewhere in the open ocean. It is the largest animal on Earth, over 100 feet long, weighing close to 200 tons. As it dies, its body begins to sink, slowly at first, then faster as internal gases are compressed by the increasing pressure. The descent takes anywhere from a few hours to several weeks, depending on depth and water temperature. Eventually, the carcass settles on the sea floor. What happens next is one of the most complex ecological events in the ocean. Scientists call it a whale fall. It is a term that covers decades of ecological succession, a sequence of different communities of organisms that use the carcass as they arrive, each one replacing the last as the resource changes. A single large whale carcass can support a community of deep-sea organisms for up to 100 years. The first stage begins within hours. Mobile scavengers detect the chemical signals from the carcass and begin arriving from miles away. Sleeper sharks, large and slow-moving, circle the carcass and tear chunks of flesh away with their blunt teeth. Giant isopods arrive in numbers, their armored bodies covering the exposed surfaces. Hagfish, ancient jawless creatures that produce enormous quantities of slime when disturbed, burrow directly into the carcass and eat from the inside. Within months, the mobile scavengers can strip a large whale down to bare bones. The second stage follows as the soft tissue disappears. Smaller organisms, bacteria, polychaete worms, and crustaceans, colonize the bones and the sediment immediately around the carcass. They process the remaining organic material in the bone's surface and the whale-enriched sediment. This stage can last for years, supporting communities of animals that have no other food source in the barren deep sea surrounding the carcass. The third stage, the sulfophilic stage, is the longest and most surprising. As bacteria break down the fats stored deep in the whale bones, they produce hydrogen sulfide, the same chemical produced in hydrothermal vents. This toxic gas becomes the energy source for an entirely different community. Bacteria that live on hydrogen sulfide colonize the bones and a community of animals that feeds on those bacteria moves in: mussels, clams, tube worms, and crabs. This community is independent of sunlight and entirely dependent on the chemical energy released from the bones. This third stage can last decades. A single large whale carcass essentially becomes a temporary hydrothermal vent community, an island of chemical energy in the middle of the abyssal plain. Scientists studying whale falls have found hundreds of species using a single carcass, including species found nowhere else in the ocean. Some of these specialist species appear to rely entirely on whale falls for their survival. They travel between whale falls across the deep sea floor, the way island species spread between islands across an ocean. One study calculated that large whale carcasses fall to the deep Pacific floor often enough that a specialist species could theoretically move from one whale fall to the next across the entire width of the ocean, one carcass at a time, without ever being far from a food source. The death of the largest animal on Earth feeds the deep sea for a century. But the deep sea also produces its own energy from sources that have nothing to do with death, or the surface world at all. On the floor of the Pacific Ocean, at depths over 7,000 feet, the tectonic plates that make up Earth's crust are pulling apart. As they separate, magma from below rises toward the surface. Seawater seeps down through cracks in the sea floor, gets superheated to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit by the magma below, and then gets forced back upward through chimneys of mineral deposits. These chimneys, called hydrothermal vents, can reach heights of several stories and are often called black smokers because the water they eject is dark with dissolved sulfur compounds and minerals. The water shooting out of a black smoker is hot enough to melt lead. The chemicals it carries are toxic to almost every form of life on Earth. The surrounding water is near freezing. There is no sunlight anywhere nearby, and around each vent, life thrives in extraordinary density. Scientists discovered hydrothermal vents in 1977, and the discovery shocked the biological world. Before that moment, the consensus was clear: all life on Earth ultimately depends on sunlight. Plants convert sunlight to energy. Animals eat plants or eat animals that eat plants. The chain always leads back to the sun. The organisms at hydrothermal vents broke that rule completely. The foundation of vent ecosystems is a process called chemosynthesis. Specialized bacteria use the chemical energy in hydrogen sulfide, the toxic gas pouring out of the vents, to produce organic compounds the same way plants use sunlight to produce sugars. No sunlight required. The energy comes from chemistry alone. These bacteria form thick mats on the rocks around the vents and inside the bodies of larger animals. Everything living at the vent depends on them, directly or indirectly. The vent community runs entirely on an energy source that the rest of the biosphere ignores. The temperature gradient around a vent is extreme. Within inches, water temperature can swing from near freezing to hundreds of degrees. Animals living at the vent edge have to navigate this gradient carefully. Tube worms cluster at the precise distance where the vent water has cooled enough to be survivable. Shrimp swarm over the vent chimneys, grazing on the bacterial mats. Crabs patrol the perimeter. One particular shrimp living near Atlantic vents has organs on its back where eyes might normally be. These are not eyes in any conventional sense, but they are light sensitive. Scientists believe they detect the faint infrared glow radiating from the vent's superheated water, allowing the shrimp to sense how close it is to lethally hot water without touching it. A heat sensor built where the eyes used to be. The discovery of hydrothermal vents changed what scientists think is possible for life. Before 1977, the search for life on other planets assumed that liquid water and sunlight were both required. The vents proved that liquid water and chemistry are enough. This shifted attention to places like the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, which may have liquid water oceans beneath their icy surfaces and hydrothermal activity on their floors. The deep ocean did not just reveal new animals, it revealed a new definition of what alive can mean. And the animals that live at the vents have taken that redefinition to places that require a second reading to fully process. A tube worm growing near a hydrothermal vent can reach 8 feet long. It anchors to the rock with a tough, flexible tube it builds around its own body. From the top of this tube, a bright red plume extends into the water, waving slowly in the current. The plume is the worm's gill, absorbing oxygen and hydrogen sulfide from the surrounding water. The worm has no mouth. It has no stomach. It has no intestines or any digestive system at all. There is no opening anywhere on its body through which food could enter. And it is one of the most successful animals at the hydrothermal vent. Inside the tube worm's body, filling much of the space where digestive organs would normally be, is a dense mass of bacteria. Not a few bacteria, billions of them, packed tightly into a specialized organ called the trophosome. These bacteria use the hydrogen sulfide absorbed through the worm's red plume to perform chemosynthesis, producing organic compounds as a byproduct. The worm absorbs these compounds directly from the bacteria into its own tissues. The tube worm is not eating the bacteria. The relationship is closer and stranger than that. The bacteria live inside the worm permanently, and the worm feeds on the output of their chemistry. The worm provides the bacteria with a safe structure, a blood supply rich in the chemicals they need, and physical protection. The bacteria provide the worm with all the nutrition it will ever need. Neither one could survive without the other. The red color of the plume is not coincidental. The plume contains a specialized form of hemoglobin, the same protein that makes human blood red and carries oxygen through our bodies. The tube worm's hemoglobin carries both oxygen and hydrogen sulfide simultaneously without allowing them to react with each other. Hydrogen sulfide destroys normal hemoglobin on contact, the same way it is toxic to most life. The tube worm's version is chemically altered to bind the sulfide safely and deliver it to the bacteria inside. Tube worms grow fast by deep-sea standards. Studies tracking marked individuals found growth rates of several inches per year, extraordinarily quick for an animal at that depth and temperature. A tube worm 8 feet long may be decades old, but it grew there in conditions that would kill almost anything else. They also reproduce in a way that fits the unpredictable nature of vent environments. Hydrothermal vents are not permanent. Geological activity shifts, the magma below changes direction, and a vent that has been active for years can go cold in a short time. When a vent dies, its entire community goes with it. Tube worms release eggs and sperm into the open water, and the larvae drift through the deep ocean until they encounter another active vent. The larvae have a short window to find a vent before their energy reserves run out. Finding a new vent in the dark of the deep ocean with no light and no map is a genuine challenge. Scientists are not entirely sure how larvae locate active vents from a distance, though chemical gradients in the water, the same hydrogen sulfide that powers the adult community, are the most likely signal. This animal, with no mouth and no digestive system, fed entirely by bacteria it carries inside itself, is arguably the most alien form of life confirmed to exist on Earth. What comes after it in the deep ocean pushes even further into territory that challenges what a single organism even means. The female anglerfish is already one of the strangest animals in the deep ocean. She has a glowing lure growing from her skull, jaws that open wider than her own body, and a stomach that expands around prey much larger than herself. But the strangest part of her biology has nothing to do with hunting. It has to do with finding a mate. The deep ocean is enormous. The midnight zone stretches across millions of square miles of total darkness. Animals are spread thin across that space, sometimes separated by miles of empty water. For a solitary predator like the anglerfish, finding another member of its own species in that darkness is one of the hardest things it will ever do. The female anglerfish solved this problem, but the solution required the male to give up being an independent animal. Male anglerfish are tiny. They are also completely different in appearance from the females. For a long time, scientists who found male anglerfish could not connect them to their female counterparts. They look like separate species entirely. The males are much smaller, around an inch long compared to the female's potential foot-plus length, and they have large, highly sensitive nostrils and eyes built for locating females by scent and the faint glow of her lure. The male's only biological purpose is to find a female. He does not hunt with a lure. He does not have an expandable stomach. His teeth are not designed for catching prey. From the moment he hatches, his body is oriented entirely toward a single goal. When he finds a female, he bites into her flesh. The biting triggers a biological process that cannot be reversed. His mouth begins to fuse with her skin. Blood vessels from his body connect to hers. Over weeks, his circulatory system merges with hers. His eyes degenerate and disappear. His internal organs, except the testes, break down and are absorbed. His fins atrophy. His body simplifies down to the reproductive tissue and the blood supply connecting him to her. He becomes permanently attached. She provides him with oxygen and nutrients through their shared bloodstream. He provides her with a constant supply of sperm whenever she is ready to reproduce. A single female can carry multiple males attached to her body simultaneously. Scientists have found females with 8 males fused to different points along her body, each one a simplified biological unit that has surrendered its individual existence entirely. From a biological standpoint, the fused male stops being a separate organism in any meaningful sense. He has no independent metabolism. He processes no food. He makes no independent movements. He is kept alive entirely by the female's body, a permanent biological attachment she carries for the rest of her life. Scientists studying this process found that the immune systems of the two animals stop rejecting each other, which is deeply unusual. In almost all other animals, fusing the tissue of 2 different individuals triggers an immune rejection that destroys the foreign cells. The anglerfish evolved a suppression of this immune response specifically to allow the fusion to work. It is one of the most extreme reproductive strategies in the animal kingdom, and it is not even the strangest form that deep-sea bodies take when resources are scarce and survival requires new definitions of what an individual animal actually is. Scientists rarely see this animal alive. In all the decades of deep-sea exploration, with submersibles and cameras and remotely operated vehicles, the giant phantom jellyfish has been observed in its natural habitat fewer than 100 times. Most of what is known about it came from specimens caught accidentally in fishing trawls, arriving at the surface, damaged and collapsed. The giant phantom jellyfish belongs to a group called Staurozoans, and it grows a bell over 3 feet across. From that bell hang 4 ribbon-like arms, thick at the base, and tapering into long trailing ribbons that can reach over 33 feet in length. 33 feet. That is the length of a school bus. These arms drift behind and around the animal as it pulses slowly through the water, moving in broad, loose spirals. The arms are not tentacles in the way most jellyfish have tentacles. They are wide, flat, and covered along their edges in smaller frilly filaments. Prey that encounters these arms gets tangled in the filaments and drawn toward the central mouth. Scientists believe the giant phantom jellyfish feeds on zooplankton, small fish, and other gelatinous animals that drift into its arms. The hunting is entirely passive. The jellyfish moves slowly through the water, arms spread wide, and collects whatever makes contact. The bell itself is dark reddish-brown, an unusual color for a deep-sea gelatinous animal. Most transparent animals in the deep are colorless or blue-tinted. Scientists think the dark pigment absorbs the faint bioluminescent light produced by the jellyfish's own digestion, preventing any glow from recently consumed prey from becoming visible to predators from below. The giant phantom jellyfish has no brain, no centralized nervous system. Its responses to stimuli are entirely decentralized, a loose net of nerve cells spread across the bell and arms that reacts to contact, light, and chemical signals without anything coordinating the response. Every movement is a local reaction. The animal has no strategy, no awareness, no sleep-wake cycle. It simply drifts and reacts. Despite having no brain and almost no ability to actively hunt, the giant phantom jellyfish survives comfortably in an environment that has destroyed submarines. Its gelatinous body equalizes with surrounding pressure. Its slow metabolism demands almost no food. Its passive hunting style burns almost nothing. The combination of extreme simplicity and extreme biological efficiency produces an animal that has likely been operating in roughly this form for tens of millions of years. Footage from remotely operated vehicles shows the giant phantom jellyfish pulsing in slow, meditative rhythms, arms trailing behind it in long, graceful curves. It is one of the only animals in the deep ocean that looks peaceful. Everything else at those depths gives the impression of urgency, of hunger, of constant calculated survival. The giant phantom jellyfish drifts through all of it without awareness and seems to be doing better than most. But even the giant phantom jellyfish is an individual, one body moving through the darkness. Something else in the deep ocean appears to be an individual, but is actually thousands of separate animals working as one. A siphonophore looks like a single animal. It moves like one. It hunts like one. Scientists classify it as one colony. But every part of it is a separate living creature, born from the same egg, specialized beyond recovery, and incapable of surviving alone. The most famous siphonophore is the Portuguese man-of-war, the blue floating creature with long, stinging tentacles that beach on tropical shores and surprise swimmers. Most people think it is a jellyfish. It is actually a colony of specialized animals called zooids, each one a separate individual with a specific job, none of them capable of independent survival. In the deep ocean, siphonophores grow to lengths that make the man-of-war look modest. The largest known siphonophore, observed in Australian waters in 2020, formed a spiral ring roughly 150 feet across. At that size, it is one of the longest animals ever recorded. It likely drifted through the deep water with its tentacles spread in a curtain covering an enormous area, filtering and catching anything that made contact. A siphonophore colony contains multiple types of zooids, each type locked permanently into one function. Some zooids are nectophores, essentially jet-propelled units that contract to push the colony through the water. They do nothing else. They have no digestive system, no reproductive organs, nothing beyond the machinery needed to generate thrust. Other zooids are dactylozoids, the stinging units that trail long tentacles and paralyze prey. They capture food but cannot digest it themselves. Still others are gastrozoids, the digestive units that break down captured prey and distribute nutrients through the shared body. Each zooid is genetically identical to all the others. They all developed from the same founding egg. The difference between them is entirely a matter of which genes were switched on during development. The same genetic blueprint produced radically different bodies based on the instructions activated in each cell cluster. Scientists debate whether a siphonophore should be called an individual or a colony. Philosophically and biologically, the answer is genuinely unclear. Each zooid is a separate animal with its own cells and its own localized nervous system, but the colony as a whole behaves as a coordinated unit, responding to stimuli, redirecting toward prey, and retreating from threats in ways that no single zooid controls or coordinates. The colony has no brain, the nectophores decide nothing, the gastrozoids make no choices, yet the colony hunts effectively, navigates the dark ocean, and survives. Deep-sea siphonophores also produce bioluminescence, releasing bursts of blue light when disturbed. The barrelife fish that steals prey from siphonophore tentacles triggers these light bursts, advertising its location to anything else in the area. The siphonophore does not choose to do this. It is a reflex distributed across thousands of individuals with no central coordination. What the siphonophore demonstrates is that the boundary between one life and many lives is not fixed. Biology has dissolved that boundary at multiple points in evolution. And in the deep ocean, where survival requires cooperation and efficiency above everything else, dissolving it turns out to be an excellent strategy. But all of this, every animal described so far, every extreme adaptation and impossible body design, exists in a zone that humans have barely visited. And visiting it comes with a problem. Pull a deep-sea fish up from 3 miles below the surface in a trawl net, and by the time it reaches the deck, it is already dying. Not from the net. Not from the handling. The animal dies because the ocean it came from no longer exists around it. The problem is pressure. Deep-sea fish are built to exist under crushing pressure, thousands of pounds per square inch. Their cell chemistry is calibrated for that environment. Their protective molecules are tuned to stabilize proteins at that specific pressure. Their bodies are structured around the assumption that enormous pressure is always present, pushing equally from every direction. Bring them to the surface, and the pressure drops to almost nothing. The protective molecules that were essential at depth suddenly exist at the wrong concentration for surface conditions. The proteins they were stabilizing begin to misbehave. The gelatinous tissues that were perfectly functional under pressure lose their integrity in low-pressure water. The fish's body, built to be compressed, begins to fall apart as the compression disappears. For fish with any gas-containing organs, the problem is even more immediate. Even tiny gas pockets that were compressed to almost nothing at depth suddenly expand as the pressure drops. Swim bladders rupture, internal gas expands and forces organs out of position. Eyes can bulge outward, stomachs can be forced up through the mouth. This is why almost every deep-sea specimen that scientists study in detail arrived dead. The trawl net brings up a collection of damaged, decompressed animals that may have looked completely different when alive. The transparent domes collapse, the gelatinous bodies lose structure, colors fade, bioluminescent organs stop functioning without the living chemistry that powered them. To study deep-sea animals alive in their actual environment, researchers need remotely operated vehicles and specialized submersibles. These vehicles are expensive, slow to deploy, and capable of observing but not always of interacting with the animals they find. A remotely operated vehicle camera can record a fish but cannot examine its internal chemistry, measure its metabolic rate, or study its behavior over days and weeks. Some research groups have developed pressure-maintaining collection vessels that trap animals at depth inside a sealed container that preserves the surrounding water pressure during ascent. These systems have allowed a small number of deep-sea fish to be brought to the surface alive and studied briefly in pressurized tanks. The information gained from even a few hours of observation of a living specimen has repeatedly corrected assumptions made from studying dead ones. The barrel-eye fish's transparent dome was only understood correctly after living footage confirmed that the dome existed and that the eyes inside it could rotate. Decades of study on dead specimens had missed this completely. The deep ocean holds animals that may look, behave, and function in ways that dead specimens will never reveal, and the vast majority of the deep ocean has never had a camera anywhere near it. Only 5% of the ocean has ever been explored. And what that means for what might still be down there is something scientists genuinely hesitate to guess at. The ocean covers over 70% of the Earth's surface. It reaches an average depth of about 2.5 miles. At its deepest, it drops to nearly 7 miles. The total volume of ocean water on Earth is enormous beyond easy comprehension. Nearly 325 million cubic miles of water. Humans have directly observed roughly 5% of it. The other 95% has never had a camera, a submersible, or a human-operated probe anywhere near it. We have better maps of the surface of Mars than we do of the floor of our own ocean. The deep sea remains the largest unexplored environment on the planet. This is partly a technology problem. Getting to the deep ocean requires equipment capable of withstanding enormous pressure, total darkness, and near-freezing temperatures. while also being able to move, observe, and collect samples without contaminating what it is looking at. Building this equipment is expensive. A single remotely operated vehicle expedition to the deep sea can cost millions of dollars and cover only a tiny fraction of the ocean floor. Scientists estimate that somewhere between 500,000 and 10 million species of organisms live in the deep ocean. Current estimates suggest that around 200,000 deep-sea species have been formally identified and described. The gap between those numbers represents an enormous region of the unknown. Every major deep-sea expedition that has visited a new area of the ocean floor has returned with species that scientists have never seen before. A 2023 expedition to an unexplored seamount system in the Pacific returned with over 100 likely new species from a single survey. One expedition, one location, over 100 animals unknown to science. Some of those new species represent entirely new branches of the tree of life, groups with no close relatives in any known category. The deep ocean appears to have preserved evolutionary lineages that went extinct everywhere else, keeping ancient body designs alive in the unchanging dark. Scientists have also detected unexplained acoustic signals in the deep ocean over the decades. Some have been identified as whale calls or geological activity. A small number remain unexplained. Whether these represent animals making sounds from parts of the ocean that no camera has ever reached, or something else entirely, remains an open question. The giant squid was considered a likely myth until 2004. Before the first confirmed video of a living adult, scientists had physical evidence, tentacles, bodies, the stomach contents of sperm whales, but no confirmed sighting in the wild. A 40-foot invertebrate was hiding in a part of the ocean humans rarely visited, and it managed to stay out of direct human observation for the entire recorded history of seafaring. The deep ocean is not fully mapped, it is not fully sampled, it is not fully understood. Every expedition changes the inventory of what is known to live there, and the deepest, most extreme point of all, the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, produces an animal so unlikely that it should not exist there at all. At nearly 27,000 feet below the sea surface, in the Mariana Trench, a fish swims. It looks like a pale tadpole, translucent skin, no scales, a floppy, gelatinous body with almost no structural rigidity. It is roughly a foot long. It looks like something that would dissolve in your hands. It is the deepest living vertebrate ever recorded on Earth. The Mariana snailfish was filmed by cameras lowered into the trench in 2014, and scientists saw something that shifted their understanding of depth limits for fish. The snailfish appeared relaxed. It moved casually. It fed on tiny crustaceans on the trench floor. It showed no distress. At a depth where the pressure exceeds the crushing weight of 15,000 pounds on every square inch of its body, the snailfish appeared entirely at home. Its body design explains how. The snailfish has no swim bladder, no rigid bones, and almost no hard structure of any kind. Its skull exists, but it is not fused into a solid dome. Instead, it is made of loosely connected, partially open sections that allow the head to compress slightly under pressure without cracking. The bones of the body are similarly open and unfused compared to surface fish. The whole skeleton is more like a flexible framework than a rigid cage. Its tissues are saturated with the pressure-protecting molecule found in all deep-sea fish, but at concentrations higher than any other species ever measured. The chemical is present in such quantities that it affects the texture of the flesh itself, making it softer and more pliable than the muscle tissue of any surface fish. The snailfish eats well for an animal at such depth. The Mariana Trench collects organic material that drifts down from above and funnels it into the narrow valley at the bottom. Tiny crustaceans called amphipods congregate there in numbers that surprised researchers, exploiting the concentrated food supply. The snailfish feeds on these amphipods, which are themselves found at densities higher than anywhere else in the trench, simply because the geography concentrates food. Below the snailfish's depth, vertebrate life appears to stop. the pressure-protecting molecule reaches concentrations that begin to interfere with the chemistry it was meant to protect. The physics simply become incompatible with the biological machinery of a spine and a complex nervous system. The snailfish sits right at that limit, as deep as a fish can go. Below the snailfish, there are still organisms. Microbes live in the sediment of the deepest trenches, and some single-celled organisms have been found at the absolute bottom of the Mariana Trench. These microbes do not face the same structural constraints as animals with bones and organs. They are essentially pressure neutral, surviving in the sediment without being crushed, because their cell walls equalize with the surrounding pressure, the same way water does. The snailfish is the last complex animal. Below it, life becomes simpler and simpler until only the most basic cellular machinery remains. The deepest point on Earth is alive, just barely, and it points somewhere beyond the ocean entirely. Europa is one of Jupiter's moons. Under its surface lies an ocean of liquid water, kept liquid not by sunlight, but by the gravitational pull of Jupiter flexing the moon's interior and generating heat. That heat drives geological activity at the sea floor. Scientists believe there may be hydrothermal vents at the bottom of Europa's ocean, pouring chemical energy into the surrounding water. Sound familiar? The discovery of life at Earth's hydrothermal vents in 1977 did something that no space telescope or theoretical model could do. It proved, with living evidence, that an ecosystem can exist with no sunlight, no surface connection, and no photosynthesis at its base. The energy source is chemical. The food chain builds from bacteria that eat rock chemistry. Complex animals live off those bacteria. That discovery made Europa and moons like it across the solar system serious candidates for life rather than frozen wastelands. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, has geysers of water vapor venting through its icy surface, which means liquid water underneath, which means possible geological activity, which means possible vent communities. Scientists are now designing missions specifically to investigate these oceans. The deep ocean also serves as a testing ground for the technology needed to search other worlds. Remotely operated vehicles that explore the Mariana Trench use engineering principles that directly inform the design of probes intended for Europa. Navigating in total darkness, communicating through water, withstanding extreme pressure, all of it was developed for the deep ocean first. The biological lessons go further than technology. Every extreme environment on Earth where life was found, deep ocean vents, high-acid hot springs, frozen Antarctic lakes, expanded the range of conditions under which life might be found elsewhere. Scientists call organisms that thrive in extreme environments extremophiles. The deep ocean is one of the richest collections of extremophiles on the planet, and each one resets the boundary for what counts as survivable. The tube worm with no mouth, fed entirely by internal bacteria, suggests that animal life could theoretically exist in an environment with no food chains in the conventional sense. The chemosynthetic bacteria at the base of vent communities prove that the sun is optional. The snailfish at the bottom of the Mariana Trench proves that complex vertebrate life can function under pressures that destroy machines built by humans. If life found a way to exist at every extreme the deep ocean offers, then the question is no longer whether life could survive on a cold, dark, pressurized ocean moon somewhere in the solar system. The question becomes how different that life might look from anything we have found so far. The deep ocean is the best guess humans have for what alien life might be like. Every strange body plan, every impossible survival strategy, every animal that looks like a hallucination instead of a living thing, is a data point in that calculation. 7 miles below the surface of our own planet, in total darkness and crushing pressure, life found a way to be extraordinary. The only reasonable conclusion is that it has probably done the same thing somewhere else. We just have not looked deep enough yet.